insurance. And a lot today.
So we're hands off, so the next time we start we just had a so that's where it's starting to roll out of that. Really, in a way, we're really hamstringing ourselves. You know, I know what's hard.
All right.
I sit on all these webinars where
I'd like to call the meeting to order. Everyone please stand for the pledge. Thank you very much. Okay. All right, a couple of things here. First, there are a few folks who are excused this evening. One is actually traveling on the West Coast and will be coming in. There he is, Councilor Gummo. I think we can see you. All right, so Councilor Gummo is joining us via Zoom. Councilor Lavin is excused, and he's actually recovering nicely, although he still has a road ahead of him. And Councilor Grimaldi is excused this evening as he's traveling. So with that being said, would the clerk call the roll?
Councilor Brennan,
Here?
Councilor Kame,
Present.
Councilor Petropoulos,
Here.
Councilor Gilat,
Here.
Councilor Lavin, Councilor Gameau,
Present.
Councilor Grimaldi, Councilor Whitfield, Mayor Cicery.
Here. Okay, one note this evening, there is an amendment to the agenda. We're adding two resolutions under new business. One resolution declaring blight for the New York State grant funding under the 2026 Federal Community Development Block Grant Imminent Threat Program. The second is a resolution establishing a public hearing for the New York State grant funding under the 2026 Federal Community Development Block Grant Imminent Threat Program. May I have a motion to amend the agenda? Councilor Petropoulos, have a second? Councilor Brennan, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? So carried. So we will amend that, and everyone should have those materials in their packet as well. Okay. The first thing we have is a proclamation for National Night Out, which for those of you who attended that the other evening know it was a very nice event and a nice time. So let me read this wonderful proclamation. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch sponsors a nationwide community building campaign, and whereas the event promotes police community partnerships and neighborhood camaraderie to make communities safer, more caring places to live, and whereas enhancing the relationship between neighbors and law enforcement brings back a true sense of community and provides a great opportunity to bring police and neighbors together under positive circumstances. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Jim Cicery, Mayor of the City of Geneva, New York, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 4th, 2026, National Night Out in Geneva, New York. Okay. All right. First thing we'll go to is public comment, and we have one, Jess Farrell. And Jess, you've asked for 4 minutes.
Thank
No.
you. I did try to reduce it to 3, so we'll see where we end up.
However you do, Jess, is fine. You get up to 4 if you need it.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jess Farrell. I live at 395 South Main Street, where I'm one of the owners of the building. I'm here tonight to talk about winter parking regulations and enforcement, which you're going to discuss later. The briefing introducing your discussion for tonight proposes to, quote, eliminate ad hoc announcements and therefore restoring a consistent and predictable set of rules. I'd like to suggest that it already is consistent and predictable. I think the problem is with the signage, and I think that suggesting a solution like this, reverting back to not having these notifications and just having a blanket time where we have to move opposite sides of the street, is going to cause great hardship to lots of people in this city. So from my perspective as someone who lives on South Main Street, there are 4 units in the building that I am one of the owners of and live in. We could very foreseeably have 8 adults living in that building. We don't, but we could. If all of those people had cars, that's 8 cars. We have 2 parking spots behind that building. So that would mean 6 cars that would be on the road It's not currently the case, but it could be a month from now if people move out and new people move in. I would suggest that instead of reverting back to an archaic policy, we should instead continue to use today's technology and just commit to the implementation. The city has never fully committed to this, which is why I think there are so many problems, one of the reasons. I think that we need to put up signs that actually direct people to the website where they can sign up for notifications, which would encourage people for how to use those systems. The current signs act as though that's not in place. So anybody who's visiting the city and also anybody who just doesn't know to look for it. On my way out tonight, I told my neighbor and co-owner that I was coming and she goes, "Oh, Jesus, don't let them change that again." That was the response. Also, I personally think that people ignore the system because the city is not ticketing or towing. If we did that more consistently and put on the ticket information about how to sign up for the notification system, I think you would achieve better compliance. This is actually along the lines with what the counselor who's bringing this this discussion has suggested would actually be the goal, part of the goal in reverting back to the old system. Counselors have said that if we revert back, people who don't realize it will get a ticket, and after a few tickets, they're not going to be doing that, and we're going to have compliance again. I'd ask, why don't we just apply that same logic to keeping the system instead of doing a new system that would mandate car shuffling all the time? If you do move forward with moving backwards, I would point out to you that in the resolution, it talks about section 335-16 of the code. Under section B of that, time-limited parking, there are 6 numbered subsections. Unless I'm reading this incorrectly and there's something somewhere else in the law that changes this, of those 6 numbered subsections, 3 of them talk about winter parking specifically. The other 3 actually do not include that seasonal language. And therefore, they actually create alternate parking for the entire year on South Main, Lewis, and Milton. Those signs are already wrong about that. Our signs already say winter parking on South Main, but if you went back to the as written in the code, you'd have to fix that to even make it winter parking. So I just wanted to point that out to you. That's it from me on that point. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jess. And you did it well under 3, just under 3. Nice job. Okay, anyone else like to join public comment? All right, we'll declare public comment closed. There are 2 items tonight for the public hearing agenda, one of which I will be recusing myself. That's B. And Councilor Gelati, Deputy Mayor Gelati will be taking over the gavel at that point. But let's first open the public hearing on the sale of city-owned property, Maryland Street parcels. I won't read those out. I think we have one person, Ken. There he is. Ken Camera.
Second, I'll make.
Take your time.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ken Camera. I am a resident of the city of Geneva, 4th Ward, 163 Lafayette Avenue. And I'm here to support the sale of the city-owned properties at the end of Crystal Street and Virginia Street and the hypothetical Maryland Street. The city has great plans for this area, connecting the 2 streets at the back and then putting in Habitat for Humanity residences there. And I can't think of anything that would enhance it even more than having another community garden in that unused property in the back. And I support this for a couple of reasons. One is Flint and April Hall are personal friends, but that means that I know them very well, and they are people of fine character. They chose Geneva to move here when they really had the whole world to choose from. They've been around the world and everything else. They were living in Florida, and they selected Geneva, and they've made it their home. And they are really great farmers. They know crops, they know vegetables, they know fruit, they know how to grow it, they know how to teach others to grow it, and they want to share their knowledge of this. So it's partly a garden for themselves where they can expand because they live in a very small spot on Oak Street, but it's and so they want to grow more crops, and they want to they want to have more crops and eat more fresh food and everything else, but they also want to show others how to do it. And they're going to be doing workshops. They're going to have farm stand for people to come that need food. So they're going to address one of the issues also that we have in Geneva, and that is the availability of fresh food, freshly grown food, native food that's been grown in the city of Geneva. So it's a total win for the city, and they're going to pay the city to do this for all of us. So I really support this. I could go on and on. I just want to get one. How many minutes or seconds have I gone so far, Mayor?
You got 30 seconds left.
Oh my God, he's right on top. Okay, okay. So last thing is, I just you won't be sorry. You'll really love this experience that they're going to provide. Give them a couple of years to get it all going, but it's going to be year round. That's the other thing. They're going to build a greenhouse, a seriously sized greenhouse, and they will grow crops year around, and they will share that knowledge with all the neighborhood over there in the 6th Ward and the rest of us as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I don't
Ken.
see any paperwork for that.
For which one?
Second one. Public hearing.
So I'll turn it to you and you can ask. Turn it over to you and you can ask. Okay. All right, for the next one, I will at this point recuse myself and turn the gavel over to Councilor Gelati.
Hello, everybody. Next public hearing is open for establishing the enforcement of dangerous or unsafe structures, GMC Chapter 111 at 555 South Exchange Street. And I don't have any paperwork in front of me. Is there anything else I need to read, or? That's it? So is anybody here for the public hearing for that situation? Jess, go ahead.
Hi, I won't take up very much more of your time, having already spoken. And I don't think there's much of an option at this point, so I won't even debate that. I will just say 2 points. One is that I completely agree with Councilor Petropoulos, who's spoken about the aesthetics. I care a lot about the way our downtown looks. I'm also a historian. Historic buildings mean a lot to me. I find this really upsetting. I also am just really frustrated that action wasn't taken sooner. And I can't say that we wouldn't have ended up in the same place, but I find it very frustrating as somebody who's been listening to these meetings and hearing a number of counselors who have been in that building and who knew how bad it was, and yet was code not sent there? I mean, I'm also very frustrated that people were living in this building. I don't know any of them personally. But I think that it's a real statement about our housing stock in the city, that people were willing to live in a situation where one of the counselors admitted he almost fell through the floor of the stairs 6 years ago. That's really upsetting to me. So I think that that city councilors, yes, your job is to do a number of things, but one of them is to speak up for people in the city who maybe feel like they couldn't go to code on their own landlords and speak up. And I'm upset that this had been a greater stink sooner, and I think a number of you were aware of it, and I wish you had done something sooner. So please, moving forward, if you become aware of something like this, please do something before we're tearing down a building like this or endangering the people that were living there. Thank you. That's all I had to say about that.
Anyone else? No. We want to keep it open. Yeah. My recommendation is to keep public hearing open till next meeting.
Okay, until August 18th.
Are we okay with that?
Yep, agreed.
Okay. Agreed. All right? We all agree?
No, just don't post it.
Okay.
So we'll continue.
We need a
this
vote on
public
that, or
hearing.
just? Okay. So we're on agreement, we're going to keep the public hearings open for another month.
That's right.
Right? Okay.
Couple weeks.
Public hearings are closed. Reports? Go ahead, Jimmy, kick it off. Huh? Did the mayor come back now? No, he's dragging his feet, I don't know.
Yeah, we'd like to see it back.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Tom. Hang in there.
off my agenda there. Okay. Next on the agenda is the mayor's report. Hold that out. All right. I have a few things here. First, with regard to the ad hoc committees, there are 3 that are currently in process. As it relates to housing, the Housing Committee met this month and is in the process of collecting data on the current state of both long-term, short-term rentals, understanding the rental market better in Geneva, as they've also been reviewing permit and code processes in other municipalities to see if there is a new updated process that the city could put in place as it relates to both the permitting or the allowance of short-term, long-term rentals, as well as code enforcement. So that is underway. For economic development, the committee received a presentation from both the LDC as well as the city as it pertains to economic development activities and purpose for each entity. Those went very well. The council or the committee did listen to some recommendations as it relates to the IDA, and that they consider actually bringing the county in to administer the city IDA. So just to let the council know that the committee actually recommended to the IDA that they consider a proposal from the county IDA to actually administer, meaning perform the executive director responsibilities for the IDA. In no small part because our current acting city manager is the executive director, and there would be a conflict of interest. So there's a need to do that, as well as the staffing and the fact that, you know, she's not too busy in this new role, but also some administrative items there. So the IDA is currently considering that. The Finance Committee also reviewed or is in the process of reviewing short-term cash management functions and continues to do so. What the council or the committee is recommending as a part of the budget process is actually to retain an entity called 3+1. There'll be more to that or on that, but the idea of this recommendation carries with it about an $18,000 a year price tag. It would do 2 things. One is it would help the city controller in terms of understanding when and where to invest short-term cash to improve returns. So we should see a better rate of return in terms of our short-term cash, and also to help him administratively, so it reduces some administrative burden. So that recommendation is being made to City Council as a part of the budget process. Next, with regard to Geneva 2030, I had the pleasure of giving the opening remarks at Geneva 2030 earlier this week. For those of you who don't know what Geneva 2030 is, it literally is a 40-plus entity involvement that helps students, literally from cradle to career, better prepare throughout their journey in elementary school, through middle school, through high school, to find a path to college and then to a career. So really a terrific endeavor. So much so that I've invited for a future meeting Superintendent Bo Wright, as well as Heather Miller, who is the executive director of Geneva 2030, to present at a future council meeting. I think one of the things we often forget are the strides that our schools are making, and that the efforts we have here are very different from other communities, and it really does differentiate us. So this is an opportunity to hear why someone may want to choose to live in Geneva and raise their family. So it's really a positive story, especially the strides that the superintendent has been making. Not that we don't have challenges, we do, but overall the strides that are making, I think it's important for us to hear. So the city clerk is working with them now to get them on the agenda, so that will happen in the coming months. As mentioned earlier, National Night Out, I attended that. Spent a good deal of the time, if not most, in the dunk tank. Again, seems to be my calling. But all in, what a terrific evening. Councilors Petropoulos, Gelati were both there. But really a nice representation from the community. Everything from EMS to state police, sheriffs, fire department, and a host of wonderful agencies in the city and community who really are there to help people as it relates to public safety and public support. So really a terrific event. 2 other pieces really around reorganization of city council as well as city staff, and that sounds bigger than it is, so I want to stress that first. We're not talking about completely reorganizing city council and the city staff, meaning the leadership. We're talking about making some enhancements to it to make a more efficient professional organization. We've spent the last, I'd say, well, tonight, and we're preparing to understand what the process would look like from a legal standpoint. What does the charter allow, not allow? We've gone through that process. We're now going to prepare to introduce something to the public for review with regard to this proposal, and then to open it to, of course, a public discussion, public debate, as we look to really attempt to improve how council functions and runs, as well as how city staff is managed and run. That, of course, leads to the city manager search. That should begin in earnest, I would think, after forming a small committee sometime in October. It will likely run parallel to the organization discussion, but at least at that point, the discussion about the organization will be in process, and that will allow us to begin the search for a new city manager. And again, it will involve, and I will announce this as well, a small but very representative committee of both city council, I should say of city council, of city staff, and of the community in terms of conducting that search, that review, and then recommendations to council for the hiring of a new city manager. So that is my update. We'll now go to council updates. Start with Councilor Petropoulos.
Yeah, a lot went on. No LDC meeting this month. We'll be meeting again in September. The Downtown Revitalization Committee did meet. I think the mayor went over it pretty well. As far as past events go, who was at Ray Ray's Love Fest over the 4th of July, or the 12th of July? Yeah, it was great. The mayor, myself, Councilor Kamen, Chief Evelyn were dunk tank targets. Yeah, so we drank a lot of dunk tank water. Yes, hats off to Ray Whitfield for that. You know, I hooked him up. He ran with it. I think it was a resounding success and will be a continuing event. Let's see what else. We had the fire parade later that evening. It was better. It looked better attended than I've seen it, and it seemed to go a little farther up than it has. So that's a good sign. Iron Man, very successful. Again, just introduced Ron Hammond to bid. They both ran with it. Wonderful. Iron Man had at least 250 new participants, and a lot of people were downtown. I got reports from some of the best weekend for a lot of the local businesses. And I overheard, as I was just walking down minding my business, overwhelming compliments on how much people actually love Geneva. And again, these are out-of-towners, so for those here, you know, it's a nice town, really. We'll get it better. Let's see, what else? A couple other things. I attended Know Your Park event at Richards Park, and that was a combination Parks Collective and Geneva Community Projects. Hats off to Geneva Community Projects for all that they do. They're so modest. They don't want individual shout-outs, so I'm shouting out the whole group. Geneva Community Projects, thank you. Let's see, Parks Collective meeting happened. We talked a lot about what's going on at Loomis Woods. I visited Loomis Woods, yeah, I visited Loomis Woods, and I'll tell you what, I was imagining I might need a machete to go. It's practically there. We just need some wood chips on the ground, and you know, just a couple of weeds here and there. It's beautiful. I'm gonna go up there more frequently. It's quiet. It's big, and you know, I'm sorry, but housing wouldn't fit there, and it's got 2 entrances. So I'll talk to the Parks Collective and see where they'll kick in. Maybe the LDC can help out. I don't know. But it was really, really nice, and I was impressed. So I think Loomis Woods is going to be here for the long haul. I was at the pavilion opening. Again, thank you, Geneva Community Projects. Was at the lakefront. A lot of fun. And finally, last night I was at National Night Out. No, I didn't get the chief back, but out of 10 shots, I got the mayor in once. So I got him back. And that's it for Ward 5.
Thank you. Councilor Kane?
Thank you. July 6th and 20th, the Housing and Neighborhood Ad Hoc Committee met. They've been discussing rental licensing and home inspection regulations. On August 17th, there will be a presentation by the committee, to the committee by Ryan Davis. And penciled in for September 8th is Tony Capelli and Michael Buckland. The Recreation Advisory Board met on July 27th. to approve their June minutes. Their next meeting will be August 24th at 6 p.m. On July 11th, I sat at the dunk tank, as he said, at Ray Ray's, and Ray Ray did a great job. There was people from, all walks of life, all over Geneva, people outside. I ran into some of my schoolmates that I haven't seen in years, and it was a really, really nice event. The pavilion, as he said, has been completed, and on the July 19th, they had an opening celebration, and they had some family events there. And Duncan is in the final stage of being completed. The electrician was there today. They got the lights on. They're already starting to stock the shelves and everything, so it should be soon. And I'd like to congratulate the girls of the Geneva General Hospital Senior League softball team. Yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, they won District 5 championship against Northern Cayuga. And good luck, girls, going into the regionals. I've known them since they started, and they're phenomenal girls, and they're doing a great job. August 14th to the 15th, Festa Italiana at the Sons of Italy on Prospect Avenue. The Sixth Ward will be jumping to celebrate Italian culture and heritage. I'm sure that Pete will tell you a little more about that. But, that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, Counselor Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I want to point out to my colleagues here, you each have a copy of the Shade Tree Report that the committee created, and outside of the door, in case any of the public would like a copy, there's some there too. You've heard me talk about it before. Generally speaking, I point out to you what Tom Burrell and his crews have done as far as firewood sales go, and it's always impressive. In fact, believe it or not, it's August 5th, but in the month of August, they've sold $400 worth of firewood. I don't know how you do that, but they find a way, and they've contributed to the city close to $22,000 over the course of time in firewood sales, and that money goes directly to the propagation of new trees and for anything that's related to the planting of new trees. It's entirely volunteer. The Shade Tree Committee's been around for about 40 years, and I mention that because it's one of those things that, it goes unseen and unheard of and unrealized, if you will. But the trees that you see up and down various streets are the product of all of that work. They work in conjunction with the DPW individuals. They also plant trees at Glenwood Cemetery, which you probably never realize because you just take them for granted. We all do. But I hope you'll take just a look at the report and see really kind of the scope and scale of the work. The city's had to remove in the last 5 years almost 200 trees due to age or disease, and yet the city, or rather the Shade Tree Committee's planted or provided through the Arbor Day, which I'll mention in a minute, 500 trees. So next Arbor Day, if you want a tree for your property's right of way, I won't get too technical about that, they give away 100 trees on Arbor Day, and it's a wonderful program, and that's all I wanted to say about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Brilliant. Counselor Gelati.
Okay, I'll lead off with August 19th. Wards 4, 5, and 6 are able to Town Hall from 6 to 9 at the Sons of Italy and Prospect Avenue. I'll make sure there's plenty of coffee and maybe some other stuff too. But you're all more than welcome. Get a chance to talk to everybody and, just a nice, comfortable scene. We've done it before at the library, and now we moved it down closer to Wards 5 and 6. So it should be a good time. Italian Festival, as Jamie said, is next weekend. Just going to bring up the date on the Italians, or the club, actually. We all welcome all cultures. We've developed now where we accept all cultures, not just Italians. Obviously, there's some restrictions as far as office, holding office and stuff, and we've been very successful with that. And so we're starting to grow in that respect as well, which I think is important for the community. Budget Review Board did not meet in July. The Police Budget Review Board, I'm sorry. The Geneva Business Improvement District, first Friday in Geneva is happening August 7th from 5 to 9. There'll be live outdoor music and events at multiple locations downtown. Bid Schumer grant has concluded. There are a few more deliverables coming as part of this grant, but for now, check out lakefront improvements to garden beds along either side of Castle Street entrance. Ironman America 250 weekend was amazing. I've never seen so many people in the town. It was a great success. Record numbers of participants and spectators were in town for the event. I hope that most local businesses took advantage of that. This year, the bid introduced several new initiatives and worked closely with event organizers to encourage visitation to downtown Geneva. As a result, we saw an increase of 2,000 visitors in our business district compared to last year. And I want to add a little more as far as the Friends of Loomis Woods Park. Christine Hoffman, thank you very much, and the Friends, thank you very much. You guys did a great job, unbelievable. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there, so I gave Jim the gauntlet, and he showed up for me. But he was gonna go anyway. Who was kidding? Anyway, I just want to read some stuff that bring you up to date where they're at. August 1st, Saturday, August 1st, they walked through the woods with horticulturist Jim Engel, who owns White Oak Nursery in Canandaigua. Give me a second here. They went through, lost a page, darn. Anyway, I go off of memory. They went through the woods, they picked out plants that should be there, poison ivy and stuff that should go, and also some stuff that helps encourage other growth. The wood chips are doing great. They need more so they can complete the pathway, which will deter any of the weeds we don't want from growing back in there. They did some trimming as well, and their ultimate goal is to also create an entrance from Carter Road into the park. So I encourage all of you to visit it. It's a growing area. They have a lot of people that are interested in keeping it going, and I think it's a good thing. So that's my report.
All right, thank you. Can Councilor Gummo, he can provide an update, correct? Shouldn't be an issue, right? Councilor Gummo, can you hear all right? Do you have an update you'd like to provide?
I can hear you, but in the interest of time and also not being a weird giant face on the screen, no report today. Were you able to hear me?
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
We hear you.
I was going to say, in the interest of time and also not being a big awkward face on a giant screen, no report today.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Gummo. All right, so that concludes the council reports. Next, we're going to a controller report.
Yeah, no formal report tonight. It was circulated to council last week, discussed with the city manager and mayor. There's a couple updates that I'll be making to it, and we'll recirculate that out with those updates.
Okay. Do you want to go through the capital? Let's do that. Okay.
Perfect. All right. I'll let you do your slide. Just one sec. Oh, I'm sorry.
So as acting city manager Youngs is getting prepared, we're going to go through the preliminary review and discussion around the capital plan and what that will look like potentially for 27, just to have an initial discussion on it. She has provided us, in concert with, of course, the city controller, myself and Deputy Mayor Gelati have also looked at it, talked through it. So this is an opportunity to first introduce the capital improvement plan and to start the discussion for the 2027 budget. Go ahead.
Thank you. All right. As the mayor mentioned, tonight's discussion is really intended to build on the conversations that we've had, including around the capital improvement plan. This is not in any way an adoption of a formal plan. Rather, it's just the opportunity for us to discuss the priorities that have been identified, the affordability considerations, and of course, any policy direction that the council may have. I'd also like to note that the council we have both the discussion materials that are on the screen in this PowerPoint, they were circulated ahead of time, as well as the actual capital improvement plan, the physical document. They do serve a little bit of different purposes. The capital plan is, of course, that comprehensive document. The final version of that will be in the budget book when presented. It identifies the projects over multiple years and provides the supporting project detail. This presentation is intended to facilitate the discussion tonight by focusing really on those major policy questions, the financial impacts, and most of the choices that are before council. So I want to start by framing the discussion. The proposed 2027 program, is obviously larger than what was presented in 2026 plan for 2027, and that is primarily because we've incorporated updated project costs and expanded our understanding of the city's infrastructure needs, in addition to a large project that was unanticipated, which we'll get into in a little bit. The important takeaway isn't simply the total cost. It's understanding that legal debt capacity is obviously not the city's primary constraint. The more important question is affordability and how much debt service the operating budget can reasonably support over time. That's the discussion we're going to be having tonight. One piece of feedback that we received was that council really wanted to understand and see projects prioritized and organized in a way that support policy decisions rather than simply reviewing a list as it is in the capital plan. So we've categorized every proposed project according to the prioritization framework that council has been discussing. You will notice something important, that roughly 82% of the proposed investments is in what we've categorized as critical infrastructure and risk mitigation. About 13% relates to deferred maintenance, and only 5% represents a service improvement. There are no discretionary enhancements or projects proposed for 2027. As you look through 2028 and 2029, do have things that we would potentially categorize as that. That doesn't mean that necessarily every project should be funded this year, but it does mean that the conversation is largely about infrastructure preservation versus expansion. The numbers on this slide are very much preliminary planning estimates. They will continue to evolve as projects are refined, as grants are pursued, and financing assumptions change. The purpose isn't to predict what the exact debt service is today, but to help council understand the relationship between today's capital decisions and tomorrow's operating budget. Again, this is circulated. It will be circulated again, so we can all have time to kind of digest them and ask more specific questions, and I'm happy to come back to this, once we get through the presentation. One policy question raised during our previous discussion was whether new borrowing should continue to replace retiring debt dollar for dollar, or whether we should intentionally reduce debt over time. This slide illustrates what pursuing that direction could require. Importantly, I'm not saying this as a staff recommendation. It's an illustration of the scale of the reduction necessary to achieve that policy directive. As you can see, obviously, we are proposing upwards of a $17 million capital improvement plan, and what we would need to look at is obviously something around $6 to $8 million in order to kind of reach our target of not dollar for dollar replacing what we're paying off. Rather than asking whether we should defer projects, I think the better question is, what are the consequences if we do? Every option has trade-offs. Deferring the roof certainly reduces the borrowing for 2027. It also increases the risk of emergency repairs, continued deterioration, and higher replacements costs later, as all things do. Our role as staff is simply to make those trade-offs apparent and transparent. It is for council to determine, the best path forward. Likewise, delaying the Pulteney Street reconstruction provides significant short-term financial relief. It's an $8 million project. At the same time, it delays investment in critical infrastructure and increases the risk that conditions continue to deteriorate. Again, this is not presented as a recommendation one way or another. It's just illustrating the consequences with each of the policy choices before us that will make the most impact. There are, of course, smaller projects we can also discuss as far as deferring, but I really focused on the big ticket items here. The big one that was unanticipated, at least at the time of the 2026 capital plan, we've obviously been talking about this a little bit since the storms back in May, is the lakefront seawall. We've updated the estimated projected costs based on our consultant's most recent information, taking what we had originally said, from a 3 to 5 million range up to 7.13 is the precise number provided by the consultant. But importantly, that does not incorporate environmental work or some of the soft costs around engineering and design. I also, again, in that vein, want to be transparent that this current figure still represents a planning estimate. When we go out for bid, that would be much more clear what that cost would be. There is additional design work, contingencies, and construction management costs that could continue to refine the total project budget. We also wanted to show council the consultant's recommended phasing because that might provide flexibility when discussing affordability while still addressing the highest risk portions of the shoreline. So primarily, the recommendation would look like doing phases 1 through 3 in 2027 and holding phase 4, the 2.93 million, for 2028. It aligns with the timeline of the consultant's scope and narrative provided, so it doesn't really take us off the path. That if we were to try and do just phase 1 and not phase 2 or not phase 3 right after, that would adjust the timeline and require just further conversation about how that is feasible. So I have obviously presented just based off of some of the feedback originally received when this was first sent out, as well as just previous discussions, some of the questions for council to consider as we look through this today. I think from a staff perspective, making sure that at least how we are approaching prioritization aligns with what you're all looking for, that's helpful feedback. Is the primary objective reducing the overall debt service, overall debt? And if so, what are the policy decisions council would like to make to be able to achieve that? Obviously, there's a couple of proposals here. We're open to exploring others if council has suggestions on other ways that we can address this. Are there particular projects that you wish to see us defer or that you don't see in here that we should be looking at for 2027 instead? And any other financing strategies. So before I kind of pause and I don't know if Adam has anything else to add and then open it up for council discussion, is that I've obviously focused on 2027 here. I understand this is a 5-year plan and I understand all of those components are very, very important. The challenge is obviously when we look at 28, we look at 29, 30, and 31, it becomes a much more, they're guesstimates at that point. We don't know the state of the cost of these projects in those years, et cetera. So we are really just aligning around, these are our priorities at this time, and we address it every single year when we adopt the new capital plan. So I'm not saying ignore them. I'm not saying they're not worth discussion. But for purposes of today, 2027 felt like the area where we should focus because that's what we would be borrowing for next year. I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is one strategy that we've used in the past is taking a single capital project and breaking it up into phases. The issue you run into with that is that once you commit in the first year to doing that, you pretty much have to continue or else you're left with the street halfway done or what have you. So that is a strategy that we've used just so we're not borrowing everything all at once. But just keep in mind that if you do end up doing that, then to Taylor's point, you really do have to pay attention to 28, 29, 30, and so on to make sure that you're phasing in the rest of that project so you're not left with something half done.
And I think that's all. So obviously happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Open it up to council. Councilor Petropoulos?
Yes, obviously the ones that you present are, in your opinion, the highest priority. I mean, the whole deferring, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, deferring what can be deferred and what, like, for example, I could see the city hall roof from my window, and I don't want it to collapse on the one hand, but because forget about it. But on the other hand, is the firehouse elevator going to snap and hit the ground? I mean, that's on, some things may be able to wait, some things aren't. So as this moves forward, I'd like to know what really, I know Pulteney Street needs it. That's been an ongoing thing for a couple of years now, et cetera. So are we are going to be able to fine tune this down the road. Likewise with the seawall. I'm still wondering how much we're actually going to have to pay because, the other thing is the lakefront erosion going to be on us, or is FEMA going to do something, or do we not know?
Yeah, so on the FEMA question in particular, the discussions that we've had today are, unfortunately, it's not a project size that reaches that level. You're usually looking at $30 million plus to be able to qualify for those things. I will say that the minute we got these estimates, I reached out to all of our state folks. I reached out to our county folks. We have actual numbers to put to this. You've expressed that you want to support us. What are our options? Haven't heard anything back on that yet. But as far as these are as close to the cost you're probably going to get as far as council committing to doing the project. Obviously, once council commits to doing the project, we would then go out to bid, and then we would get those firm numbers. But this 7.13, again, those are excluding the engineering and the soft costs there. That's what it is. That's about the level of detail and kind of permanency that we can get with this proposal. So that information, as it's proposed today, that's what it is. That's for council to
Well, I
consider.
guess to finish my points, what I'll want to know is, how in extremis, I know the city hall roof, if rain leaks into the, that's a big deal. Can the seawall last another year, or is it literally ready to crumble with people on it? Things like that. That's what I want to know.
Yeah,
Or
I think
will-
that's kind of what I'm attempting to do this evening. So of course, we'll take feedback on how we can communicate that better. At this point in time, it is our, DPW director's position that this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed, that there is serious safety concerns. There are alternative approaches as far as blocking off the lakefront and not allowing people to get that close to those areas. But this is and again, we've got the scope, we've got all of that stuff that has been and can continue to be shared for folks to take another look. But, the professional opinion at this time is that it is a safety concern and should be considered, a priority by council. On the city hall roof, this has been deferred for several years. Of course, we can never know at what time we're at risk of it actually caving in. It's certainly staff's proposal that this needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. Aside from the water intrusion and the concerns about the internal portion of the building, this also addresses the cornice on the top, which you'll see there's fencing around and netting around that because pieces continue to fall off of that. And so that's the other kind of safety concern for folks around the building. It's been deferred before. It can be deferred again. It's, again, staff's position that it's a priority. That's why it's in here. But council discretion there.
Would you mind, Adam, going back to, or Taylor,
Yep.
the slide that shows, I think it's the one or two before, that's it, one more back, the affordability. And I think what I want to do, I think, Taylor, this is the intent. I think we start with what's our philosophy first. Let's talk philosophically here for a little bit about how this plays in with the budget, how this plays in with the resolution that we adopted as it relates to debt, and a little bit about what we can and can't do. First of all, this city can certainly do, and this council can certainly pass anything. If the council so decides to pass every one of those, it can certainly do that, right? Well, let's talk a little bit here about philosophy so that we can give direction to Taylor and to Adam and city staff. If you look at these figures, and we've talked about the fact that the city carries a significant debt load, of which 18 cents on every dollar is basically passed through to the taxpayers of the city. What we talked about as a part of the fiscal discipline was how do we not necessarily shock our system and stop investing? How do we slow it so that we invest things that are critical and in need and allow ourselves to begin that process of reducing or at least addressing the debt to bring down the taxpayer burden? Yet again, still allow us to invest. When I look at the numbers here, right, the one that I want to focus in on is the amount of debt that's retiring, 5.9 million. 5.9 million is sort of the number. So if 5.9 million is coming off, do we want to borrow 5? Do we want to borrow 1? Do you want to borrow none? That's, I think, and would suggest is the area of discussion. It's not that we don't need to do Pulteney Street. It's not that we don't need to do the seawall. It's not that we don't need to do any of this. We need to do all this and probably a lot more, right? A lot. I've seen the list, right? So the question for the council is, philosophically, what number or where do you want to direct city staff in terms of a target for debt that could or should be issued as it then relates to the 2027 budget, right? Because we can't do everything. That's for sure. But what are the things? And maybe it's part seawall. Maybe it's the roof. Maybe there's something else we haven't seen or that we'd like to consider. as Taylor had mentioned. But I want to first start with the philosophical discussion to the council. Does anyone on the council have an appetite to borrow more than $6 million and to exceed the amount that's retiring?
Absolutely not, not my end.
Councilor Petropoulos, Councilor Kane?
We don't want to borrow more than we need to, and I like the idea of borrowing under the amount that's getting retired. Might slow things for the plan, but it's still less.
If we take, if we have money coming off the books next year, this year, next year, what can we do to maybe do some of these projects but still be less in debt than we were last year? If that makes sense. Do we have any? Is it lack of a better term, wiggle room? I guess I'm trying to say. Because I would like, because we need to. I think we need to stay focused on reducing debt. No question about that.
Yeah.
But how can we do that intelligently and but still not the city fall into a hole? I know we're working on
It's a good
other
question.
revenue. I know we're working on
That's
other
the
revenue
question.
areas.
Yeah,
I know we're working on other revenue areas we're trying to build up.
Yeah.
I know we are, but leave that out of the equation right now.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're trying to kind of solve as staff too is, we kind of thought we might be in a decent condition, and then we got the seawall numbers at 7.2 million, and it just threw everything, in a loop. And again, I guess the wiggle room that I would refer to is phasing, and saying, okay, Pulteney Street, maybe we do. I would obviously have to speak with the director of public works on what order this goes in, but it's very likely they wouldn't be doing the water, the sewer, and the mill and pave and curbing and all that stuff within the same time frame. So you can do some in 27, some in 28. That way, you are not borrowing the full amount in 27, and you're also rolling off more debt in 28. What that does is then we also have a 28 capital program, and so we have to then maybe defer things, but that's the reality of government, local government.
Let me introduce, if you don't mind, maybe a concept and maybe something we can think about here, because I think, Counselor, to your point, I think the broader point, we're thinking in terms of 27 only. If we think of 27 through, let's say 31, right? Or 32, how much debt comes off the books over that 5-year period? What does that give us then in terms of the ability to borrow and at the same time target the reduction in debt as we work on building up the reserve funds, as we work on building the PAYGO, which allows us then to offset the debt? Is it possible by next meeting for us to show what that 5-year trajectory looks like and then take some of these projects? Let's take a look at them, even looking out 5 years, just to get a sense of if we wanted to responsibly, be financially responsible, fiscally responsible, can we look at projects and actually look them out in terms of where debt's coming off? So Pete, whether it's 8 million, let's say maybe 8 million is not today, but let's save up for it for a year or two. And then we can have enough of debt coming off that we could afford that lock, stock, and barrel. So I have a feeling Director Venuti is going to say, if you're going to do one, you might as well do them all, because it's going to be ridiculously expensive to sort of space them all out. I'm going to go on a limb and say that, right? My point is, a different way of thinking about this is, if we look at debt for the next 5 years and then start spacing out these projects that allow us to still invest, but do so in a way that helps manage the debt and affordability of the city, provide some relief to the taxpayers, would be my suggestion.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah. Basically, show with a can of worms.
Sorry, yes.
No, I think, and maybe Adam can understands and we'll take it back. I think from my perspective, what we are presenting today is a 5-year look at how we would recommend phasing these projects. That's, they're separated out up through 2031. There can be a policy decision to not do these projects this year. And again, we can add more numbers, provide any other numbers that are needed on what that cost would look like in 3 years or whatever it is. I think I'm just a little bit not understanding the ask separate from what the capital plan is.
I think, are you looking for a 5-year debt roll-off and basically adding debt that doesn't exceed that?
Correct.
Okay.
Or it gives a picture. So,
Yeah.
Taylor,
Or what that
if we're
looks
saying
like.
5.9 is running off, that's coming off in 1 year. What you just described is this is a 5-year view. So you only gave us 1 year for debt falling off. We need to see if this is truly, if some of these projects are 1 year, some of these projects are 3 years, some are 5 year. One of the ways to do that is to show what would it add, at least projected debt, for the phases unto which those projects would be implemented. Does that bring some more
so-
clarity?
Yeah, you're taking, obviously, we map out how much debt is coming off each year for the life of this 5-year capital plan, and then how would we take the projects that are currently in that plan, and if some of them can be phased in over multiple years, do that so we're not exceeding the debt that comes off, or show that
Right.
that's the only way to do it.
If that's 17.9 million over 5 years, then it's only three and a
It's
half.
not. Yeah,
That's 1 year. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, 1 year of
'Cause
borrowing, yeah.
Over
It
5
would be
years would be
paid-
good because it's 3.5 million a year. But
But
that's
I
a lot
think-
of money.
Yeah,
but
I think, Counselor Keem, the problem is, we'll say 17.9 this year, 5.9 is coming off, it's over 5 years, and next year there's another 17 million ask.
Right.
That, the difference here in thinking, at least my thinking is, or belief is, that if we want to look at each project, you then scope out what the 5-year trajectory looks like in terms of an expense, in terms of a debt issuance, and then in terms of the cost. Then you overlay with the debts falling off, so you see, as each year goes by, how much debt falls, how much new debt comes on, right? Because not all, if I'm not mistaken, some of this starts as a ban, then it ends up as debt. Is
Yep.
that correct?
Yep, it starts off as the short-term debt and then
Yep.
converts to long-term. It most likely will still result in deferring a project or two or more, depending on what it is, because, if 5.9 is rolling off next year, that we have 2 projects that are more than that already.
Yeah. That's my next question.
So yeah, and I would say it would probably not, it would absolutely not be the staff recommendation, but we can run those scenarios so that everyone can see them and we can have that discussion. Because obviously the staff recommendation is what was presented.
Sure. In completely respecting the recommendation,
Yeah,
which I know
yeah.
all of us do, I think that the view on this should be, if there are, we have, what is it, 11 million in bans right now?
Yes.
Plus or minus, that's going to have to convert. So next year, if 6 million comes off, that might already be wiped out because those bans are going to convert. So what we're really talking about here, and again, having an understanding of this, is that even doing the roof may add to the debt beyond the 60 we're at today. Is that a fair statement?
Beyond yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So we would be borrowing more than's coming off. So this is the conundrum here.
Yeah.
Are we, as was asked, I think appropriately, I can't really see it now, question 2, right? Affordability and debt issuance versus investment in critical need. Because following these recommendations and what's coming off, debt will go up. It will go up, and the cost of the taxpayer will go up.
But a large portion of that, if I'm looking at option A, I don't know where that slide is, but I'm looking at it on my phone, that the net annual change would be 760,000 K to 1.2 million a year, but that includes the seawall at 7.2 million, doesn't it?
This doesn't include any of the projects that,
Okay.
are proposed, no.
That's
All right.
another 17.9 million on top of that,
Yeah.
1 million a year.
Okay,
I mean, we're
Well-
literally talking about a lot of debt coming online.
yes. Oh,
That's
yeah.
that's what's coming down the tracks.
And we have to look too, because if you're gonna spend $7 million on a seawall, without putting a water break up there, I mean, you get another southern wind coming out of the south, and it's just gonna wash that $7 million down the lake.
Yeah, that's included, that discussion is within the scope of the narrative provided by the engineering firm.
All right. Councilor Petropoulos.
So basically, on the one hand, yeah, our whole philosophy is reducing debt. On the other hand, we don't want the city collapsing because then we got to borrow, you know. So I think the happy medium is to fine tune the projects. I mean, I don't know. What is the happy medium in your opinion?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, this is it. But at this point, if there's a project you don't want us to do,
Right.
we'll take it off. That's,
What she's doing is throwing it on us to say, what do you want to
Yeah.
do? So
Right.
Jim, we can't, the ping pong ball, we can throw it back
Yeah.
and forth all night if you want to get some skill.
Can I make a recommendation?
Yes,
To Councilor
please.
Petropoulos? I went through this whole list here, and I marked down some hard no's, some maybes, and some that I would definitely agree with. Why don't you do that, and the rest of the councilors do the same thing? Then we can butt heads and say, listen, I'm gonna fight for this, or, you know, and see where because we might be sitting, you know, pretty much on the same spot. But
Yeah, there's still work to do on that side. This is just about the issues of the debt.
I just have a question, it might be just from my own knowledge, I think, or maybe other people's too. So let's just say we don't do Crystal Street at all. We don't touch it. It's out, right? Would that do that project?
it would not continue. It would not continue unless Habitat for Humanity
Right.
wanted to pay for that separately.
I would suggest this.
That's just
Philip.
one-
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Pete.
That's just one, my point being, we need to look at the projects we're gonna maybe not approve, and what's the negative impact, or the impact period, by not doing them now, waiting, or spread them out. We need to, because if we don't do the seawall, for example, which is right now the only attraction we have for tourists, pretty much, is lakefront. So if you're blocking all that off, there's not much of an attraction there. And I don't know where they're gonna put the Garlic Festival, I don't know where they're gonna put, Iron Man probably out. I would assume it's gonna hurt that project. I think those are things we need to think about when we're talking, we're looking at this stuff, because the impact's gonna be financial to us as well. Not just the debt, but also any revenue coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's how staff arrives right at these projects as the proposed part of the plan, is that we've looked at and we've weighed those things. These are the areas that we propose require investment. And then obviously it is, council's position to say, well, to align with our financial policy, these are the ones that we're not gonna do this year. Does Counselor Demo still have okay.
Or you could talk longer. So, I think, and we can, well, unless there's any other questions, my only thought on this as a priority is, and I'm gonna follow up with what Pete said, what are those projects that need to continue for them to fully realize whatever the original intent was, hence Crystal Street? New seems to be the seawall, right? Unexpected, unanticipated. And then Pulteney Street is literally addressing a concern given the aging infrastructure we have. Really, those are the three buckets. The one that's probably the most critical, not critical, is continuing so Habitat for Humanity can construct the homes. Seems to be fairly straightforward, right?
Yep.
To Councilor Kane's point, and again, I can't stress this enough, as we get into the budget season and we start talking about what the asks and the requests are, decisions certainly can be made in other areas to cut or change, whether it's new revenue or certainly looking at things by department in terms of what we want to do or not do to help afford this. So that's where, again, more of the difficult discussions are going to be had per what Councilor Kane had said. So I think philosophically what might be helpful is to look at the debt as it's coming off over the 5-year period, what the projects look like in terms of potentially adding new debt each of those years. So at least we see what each one does to the debt profile of the city over that 5-year period, right? Because if we have, say, 6 times, say we have 35 million coming off in 5 years, seems to be about the right number, right, Adam?
Yeah, it's probably close to.
So 35 million over 5 years, what can we do with that? That's the reasonable discussion, I think, right? What's currently committed that's going to fill it? What's not? What's the gap? What do we want to do with that? Do we want to bring debt down? Do we want to go beyond it? That would be the debate for council. So that would be my request.
Yep, I can do that.
All right? Excellent presentation. Thank you.
All right, so now we're gonna shift to the budget update from the July 21st meeting. All right. Just give me 1 second. Yeah. All right. So the capital plan obviously, answers what infrastructure the city needs to invest in. The operating budget answers what level of service we can sustainably provide year after year. Well, they're separate documents. They ultimately are connected by the same financial reality. So we've talked about what we would like to build. Now let's talk about what we can sustainably operate. Following our capital discussion, I'd like to shift our focus to the operating budget. So tonight's discussion is intended to build on the conversation that we had in July. Adam will again walk council through the updated financials and assumptions, while I'll focus on what those numbers mean from an operational and policy perspective. Since our last work session, we've continued refining the budget, updated revenue projections where appropriate, completed additional work on the fee schedule, evaluated department requests, and prepared the ARM or above required maintenance packet that you all have before you tonight. That is a very long document, but it is comprehensive, and I'll make reference to it throughout. But I think Councilor Kane made a very good point that taking a look at that individually and going through one by one is definitely a helpful exercise in preparation for September 9th's proposed budget. I also want to distinguish between what I'm presenting and what's in those packets, right? This presentation reflects our current recommended budget based on our 0% tax levy increase guideline. The ARM packet is different. It captures the additional requests departments submitted that are not included in our proposed budget. So council has full visibility into what departments identified as priorities beyond the available resources. These continue to guide every recommendation management is bringing forward. I won't belabor them. We're all familiar with them at this point. So at our last work session, council provided several clear policy directions. We've talked about reducing debt over time. We talked about prioritizing those recurring solutions, about protecting our core services before considering any type of personnel or service reductions, to emphasize transparency about what the operational impact would be with each of these decisions, and to continue providing those directions have directly informed both the recommendations in tonight's presentation and the organization of the packet that you have before you. This is just where we are in the process. Again, all in anticipation of the September 9th proposal of the city manager's budget. All right, I'll pass it to Adam to kind of walk through the updated financial position.
Okay, thanks, Taylor. So starting with the general fund, last time we met, we were at about $1.1 million in the gap. Now we're just under 200,000. Very confident that we can figure that out and get there. We did have some revenues that we were able to increase based on where we received second quarter sales tax, occupancy tax, things like that. So things are tracking better than projected, which is giving us the confidence to be a little bit more aggressive for 2027, but still relatively conservative on those estimates. And in going through, we've met with several department heads and just confirming these expenditures, what can be deferred, what's really necessary right now. And are there things that we can, that maybe we were planning on doing in 2026 that we aren't going to be able to do for whatever reason, and we can get some of those 2027 things done now and not even involve them in the upcoming budget. So looking at all different kinds of things, it's the same with water and sewer fund. the water fund about $655,000 gap right now, and the sewer fund about 382. I do expect those revenues to increase slightly. The calculations I've been using for water and sewer consumption have been relatively low. So as I spend more time in those two funds, I do expect those revenues to increase, not enough to cover that gap in total, but enough to get us close where it shouldn't be anything that's too devastating to any department head, although it's only one department head, so he can deal with it, I guess.
I have a question, just because I'm new and I don't understand.
Sure.
It says requested expenditures and projected revenues, and like you got a structural gap.
Yep.
Why would you give a structural gap? Why wouldn't you give a budget that's equal, that zeroes out, and then let us work from there?
Yeah, we're going to. We're just, the budget, we haven't, when we present the budget in September, it'll be balanced. We're just letting you know along the way where we're at as we ask for guidance and direction on things. So, you know, as we were the last couple of meetings, it's so early in the process that to bring a balanced budget now, there would be a lot of unanswered questions.
I'll be
yeah.
kind of frank on that too. I mean, in this situation, we would be looking at cutting staff and
Well,
things
right,
like
but
that.
but isn't that what you have to show? I mean, do you think you're going to find $181,000 in the general fund between now and September?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. On the general fund,
That's
I think
really
general fund is an easy yes. I mean, that's a relatively, on the water and sewer, I think, you know, we talked to the mayor about this, and we've obviously talked to council. We have the water and sewer rate study that we're exploring, and so that is a big factor for us when we think about what next year is going to look like. And so making drastic cuts to services in those two areas in order to present in August a budget that's at zero feels premature and, you know, and also just kind of a false representation to the public of where we will end up.
Well, right. Okay.
Those rate adjustments aren't in those figures already.
No, this is not, this gap is without
This
adjustment.
doesn't have any tax increase, any water rate increase, or any sewer rate increase.
So the question is, were these numbers assuming a 0% levy?
Yep. Mhm.
Okay.
So keeping the same levy, which would ultimately, we'll talk later, reduce the tax rate.
Yeah.
Good. Awesome. All right, we can keep going. Yeah.
Thank you.
These are pretty similar to last
Yeah,
time.
these are basically the same as last time, which, you know, they'll be in the presentation for your reference, but it's just what percent of the total budget these categories are: personnel, health insurance, retirement, Social Security, and debt. And we did that for all three funds. That can be reviewed as needed. So as of right now, these are kind of the categories of the budget and how much they represent in actual dollars. So public safety being the highest, with police and fire at about 8.3 million, DPW 3.7 just about. Community development services includes recreation, code, and planning and economic development. And then there's administrative, which is clerk, controller, assessor, IT, city manager, personnel, all those administrative departments. And then we have our retiree health insurance, state retirement, and debt, which make up big chunks of our budget on an annual basis. Water fund, same deal. We've got our two water departments, the plant and the maintenance department, and then our benefits and our debt at 1.3 million. And then sewer fund is going to be the same. Sewer maintenance, wastewater plant, and then debt, which is about $200,000 more than last year in terms of debt service because of that ATAD project that we've added.
On the revenue side, I think Adam touched on this, but I just kind of showing how we've bridged that gap a little bit on the general fund to give transparency to that. There's Q2 sales tax that have been trending higher, so we've adjusted our projections on that. Adam has talked with the finance team at looking to some adjustments for penalties and things like that. And we're doing a complete review of our fee schedule package and making sure that we are accounting for, improving our cost recovery where appropriate, accounting for inflation where fees have remained unchanged for extended periods of time, and also benchmarking against surrounding municipalities and the costs you would see across there. So this slide summarizes the deferred operating requests. And that is, I want to emphasize that because I don't want you to think that the numbers just don't match what's in the ARM packet. The ARM packet is inclusive of capital and equipment replacement plan as well. This is just the operating budget requests that are deferred. So they're outlined in there. The numbers exist in there, but they're also included with the other requests, like capital plan requests that may have been deferred and not made it into the capital plan. The presentation summarizes the request by department. The ARM report goes much further. For every single request, you'll find the department's priority ranking, an estimated cost, the operational impact, and a management recommendation. Importantly, the ARM report includes requests that are not reflected in the proposed budget. It is intended to provide transparency into what departments believe they need beyond the currently available resources. It is not necessarily recommendations that management is advancing. Rather than reviewing every individual request tonight, I encourage council to use that packet as the primary reference document. Some requests address immediate safety concerns, others relate to deferred maintenance, some represent service enhancements, and others are long-term staffing discussions. My recommendation would be to obviously evaluate those under the same prioritization framework that we've used throughout the entire process. I do want to, let's see here. 1 second. One request from our last discussion was to think more intentionally about the long-term operational value of the investments that we're making, not just their upfront costs. And so I don't want to overstate this slide because these aren't formal return on investments, and many municipal investments, particularly those related to public safety or infrastructure, don't have a traditional financial return. Rather, these are examples of how management is evaluating the requests beyond their initial cost. We're asking questions like, will this improve efficiency? Will it reduce manual work? Will it avoid larger costs later? Will it help us deliver services more effectively? These are simply representative examples of the lens we're applying when we evaluate the requests through the budget process. Not every worthwhile investment saves money directly, but every investment should improve service. It should reduce risk, increase efficiency, and avoid greater costs in the future. Before we move into the remaining policy decisions, I wanted to highlight that this budget has continued to evolve since our last discussion. Management is working really hard to work with department heads to refine these requests, to identify grant opportunities, to defer purchases where appropriate, and reduce recurring costs without compromising core services. This slide highlights some of those changes. These examples are not intended to suggest that the underlying needs have disappeared. In many cases, the needs remain, but what it demonstrates is that management continues to make an effort to narrow the structural gap before bringing remaining policy choices to council. All right, so at this point, we're really entering policy territory. Management can identify efficiencies, we can recommend priorities, but ultimately structural balance requires policy decisions. Those generally fall into 4 categories: increasing recurring revenues, reducing expenditures or deferring purchases, utilizing the equipment reserve differently, or relying on one-time fund balance. Each option comes with trade-offs, and none completely eliminates the need for policy decisions. An important thing to think about, I think, Adam's going to talk a little bit about some of the information that may inform the decision that council makes, particularly around what different, impacts some of the decisions would have as it relates to taxes directly.
Thank you. So on this slide, I've got what the taxable value is going into 2027, the tax levy, which is the same levy that was utilized in 2026, and then what that tax rate comes out to. So that's a decrease in our tax rate from 12.17 to 10.63 per $1,000 of taxable value. I did circulate a little sheet that basically calculated if you were to increase the tax levy 1%, 2%, all the way up to 10, not necessarily making any recommendations, but just wanted to show council what those numbers look like. So it would show what the updated levy is, and then how much additional revenue you get. So, for example, a 1% increase in the levy gets you about $92,000. So, it wouldn't cover our gap that we have right now, which is $188,000. However, it could help to fund, the different funds that have been established by City Council, the PAYGO fund, the fund balance, equipment, capital, things like that. All council decisions, of course, and the reason they're not included in the slide is the direction we got from council was to maintain the 2026 levy. But I did just want to make that clear because it comes up each year. What does a 3% tax increase look like on the levy? So now you have those numbers just for reference.
And I have Counselor Grimaldi in the back of my head saying that's why you should have voted on the budget, not the levy.
Yeah, either or. We got to do both anyway.
Question, what is the current inflation rate and where do you see it going next year, let's say? Ballpark's fine.
The current inflation rate?
Yeah.
It's 3.9%.
What's
Yeah.
that?
3.9, it's likely going to be around the same, if not slightly less, unless the Iran war keeps going, basically. That's what the economists are saying, at least of what I read and see.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Thanks, Adam.
So the city's financial challenge obviously is not the result of any one decision, department, or budget cycle. It's the result of recurring expenditures growing faster than recurring revenues over time. Our responsibility as management is to present that reality honestly, identify efficiencies wherever it's possible, and clearly explain the operational impacts and trade-offs associated with each of those choices. Council's responsibility is to determine which of those trade-offs best reflects this community's priorities and values. And we appreciate, obviously, any discussion we can have tonight surrounding that, and we'll use your feedback to continue to refine, again, for ultimately a proposed budget on September 9th. That's when we're actually proposing what is before you as opposed to putting forth information for discussion purposes.
Okay, discussion, questions, guidance, answers?
I have no answers. I don't know. Obviously, we're in a rock and hard spot here. Our inflation is almost 4%, 3.9, whatever it is. How do you keep up with that without doing something? And increasing revenue, obviously, has been the topic for as long as I can remember, and we never achieved it for some reason, for a lot of reasons actually. I don't know. It's a direction to be tough because I think we're going to have to have a hard conversation between all of us.
Well, let me,
I like to see, want to keep the debt down. There's no question about that. But then from there, I'm lost.
Counselor Kane?
Yeah, well, there's always something's gonna happen. Something's always gonna happen that you're not gonna plan for. But the reality is, everybody outside these doors has to tighten their belt a little bit now. So, we wanna keep the debt down, yes, but we also need to keep the spending down. We need to keep, we talked to a lot of people, and a lot of people said, well, if continuing everything the way we're continuing it now is gonna cost us a lot more money, then we don't wanna do that. So, we're gonna have to look at that. And, everybody deals with inflation, but they also only have a small amount of money that they're able to work with, and they have to work around that. And they just can't go and tax people to make up for that inflation. And we want a lot of wonderful things, and we want beautiful stuff for everybody. However, we have to be able to afford it.
I just hope they understand that. I hope that, that they understand the impact, depending on what decision we make. And I hope that more people in our wards reach out to us and give us a better idea of how they think they want us to proceed. So we have more than just, we still have a good sample to talk to. And I think that should be one of our high points at our
And I think
meeting
we're
on the
gonna have a
19th.
town hall where we can
That
discuss.
should be a high point on the 19th, is really talk about taxes and this whole thing we're in.
So the question is, where's the happy medium between cutting taxes and raising the levy or not raising the levy? There is a happy medium, you know, and maintaining operations. That's a big deal to me, to a lot of the department heads, to a lot of constituents, you know. They don't want to, you know, they don't just assume, oh, yeah, they're going to keep going the way they've been going. No, not necessarily. So, yeah, we do have to really look at that. We can't, I mean, the reason, I'll say it again, the reason we decided on 0% is because we were bickering and we needed to start somewhere. Okay, and that's why you presented what you presented. There are other options, and again, I'll be talking to everybody on this council about them to see where that happy medium lies. Yeah, you know, if you have a budget cut of $400 grand, all right, what does $200 grand cut look like, or whatever, you know, or if the inflation rate's 4% with a 2.5% increase, that's still a tax cut. You know, it's inflation done. None of us can help that. You know, that's my comment. So we'll be talking.
All right, I'll close it or leave it with this in terms of a direction, if you will, or at least a philosophical point here. And the transparency, and I appreciate, by the way, and my thanks to you, Taylor, Adam, especially as we up to this point where you provided more transparency into where we are and what we're dealing with, I think, than we've seen historically. So my thanks to you and all the staff for that. My thanks to everyone also for being serious and demonstrating really what it is they need to operate and to continue operate as we are currently structured. So my thanks to all staff as well. What council's recognizing, I don't think there's a person in this room or is listening or in this city won't recognize, is that continuing on the same path that we've been continuing just isn't feasible without making a difficult choice or series of difficult choices. And there's really two. Do you seek different ways to raise revenues, either by tax increase or by other fees and increases? Do you cut? Now, I appreciate what Councilor Petropoulos is saying about a happy medium. That always comes to interpretation because everyone's medium is going to be different. But I think the philosophy here that we've been hearing and moving towards is one of fiscal responsibility. And I'm going to use that inflation for a second here and explain what that means. 3.9% means that even if we were to come in with a 2% tax increase, it's below inflation. That means we're actually beating inflation. That's actually a good thing. I'm certainly not advocating for a tax increase, but I want to point out that 3.9% as an average number, if we came in at 3%, we are literally coming in under inflation, under cost. That by definition is a cut. So if we were, as we move forward, and this is what I want to prepare council for, staff for, the city of Geneva for, is that as we look at these and make some hard decisions around, and I'm looking at the arm here, it's a very long arm, right? It's a very weighty arm. What we can and can't do. The challenge will be is it's not really council's ability to say whether or not a device is going to be beneficial for the fire department versus something for the police department. Although since the chief is here, I might lean in your favor right now. I'm kidding. It's really not up to us to decide that. And what I really want to avoid is us getting into bickering or talking about things that are deep here, because that's really not our purview. That's up to staff to recommend what they truly need or don't need. What I will say is that if I take 3.9% as an inflation rate, anything underneath that is actually a cut. We will therefore be cutting spending coming anywhere south of that. So if we look at the priority around keeping the debt at or below where it is, if we look at keeping spending at or below where it is slightly, with potentially a tax increase under that 3.9, that is still a cut. It is still being financially responsible, and it's putting us on a glide path to make decisions that don't shock the system. All right. If that's a policy process, it's a way to think about this as you're building this proposed budget out. Counselor Kane?
The most important thing for us to do for the residents of Geneva and the taxpayers is to keep Geneva safe and sanitary. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. You can spend all the money we want on it, and it still isn't going to make it beautiful. But we have to make, everybody that's talked to me wants to make sure that Geneva stays safe and Geneva stays sanitary. Those are the most important things, jobs that we have. So when you're making your decisions, to bring to us, keep that in mind.
Yeah, I think that aligns well with the kind of priorities that you all had set for us at the beginning. I think I just want to ask a very pointed, clarifying question, that if on September 9th, a proposed budget were to include a 1 or 2% increase on the tax levy, is that outside of what you're asking us to do as staff? Or is that, if it is justified with what we're bringing forward, that is something that you are okay with seeing as a starting point?
I would be.
Yeah.
Would anyone disagree with that?
I really don't know how I feel about that right now. I have to talk to people and see how everybody else feels, because it doesn't matter what I myself feel.
You say you'd agree with a 1 or 2% increase in the levy?
I'd be more comfortable with any increase under inflation, because that by itself, unto itself, is a cut.
Oh.
I know the logic, you've got to think it through. You're still paying more, but it's below the rate of inflation.
So my question to staff, well, obviously you and Adam, and yes, thank you very much for all you've done thus far. Are you asking us for what we'd like to do, increase or not increase wise before? Or are you going to go ahead and present what we said on day one, let's start at 0?
Well, so that's kind of what I'm asking.
Right.
Because, again, if the guidance is you want a proposed budget that is at 0% increase on the tax levy, I will present that. It sounds like there may be an appetite for seeing how a 1% or 2% impacts what is excluded, what we're cutting, et cetera, and that's a more agreeable path. If it's 0%, then it's 0%, and we will propose the cuts that are necessary for
Well,
that.
I mean, Mr. Mayor, how are we going to approach that? Are we going to have any meetings that we decide on what we're going to do for the edification of staff?
Well, I think it's less with respect to, it's not for the edification of staff. I think it's for the realization of what budget do we want to produce given the philosophy we're talking about here. And without reiterating it all, if we want to look at bringing down spending and getting spending under control, and forgive me for using that word, I don't want it to sound as though they're dramatically overspending, because this city does not. But we certainly do have a lot of expenditures. If we want to maintain safety, we want to maintain being sanitary, we want to maintain the streets and the protections that we offer as a priority, then this budget at 0 will mean a cut somewhere. It'll mean a less truck or 2. It'll mean a less firefighter. It'll mean a less police officer. It'll mean less people in DPW. There's no other way to look at it. And if I'm reading this correctly, and you tell me if I'm in the wrong space, if we came in at a 0 levy, we will be firing people. We will be letting people go.
We would not be filling positions that are currently existing positions. I mean, since Chief is here, I will use the police department as an example.
Right.
We would not be filling an existing vacant police officer role.
Right.
That would not be filled.
Right. Another way to put it is that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, would I be out of line if I proposed a 2.5%?
Well,
Or not yet?
I would say not yet. If
Okay.
I can, just for the purposes of direction, and if anyone wants to object, feel free. I wouldn't mind saying to the city manager and the city controller, propose a budget that introduces also in it what a 2% increase would look like for the discussion.
Well,
That gives a little more flexibility here, but it also shows us what a 2% would look like.
we can
Councilor
look
Brown.
at that. That's, of course, that's reasonable to look at it. But I think that keeping it at 0 produces evidently a $10.63 in round numbers
Rate.
tax rate. And I think that that is the investment that the world will see, that we are reducing that rate. And that's a tremendous reduction over even 36 months ago. Tremendous reduction. And that becomes the investment tool that people will see. I think that matters. Also, we don't know, of course, what the results of the rate study is, the water and sewer rate study is, but that's likely to produce some positive results.
Right.
So we're going to have, even though, yes, 10.63 is painful. That will produce results over the long course of time. But the sewer rate and water rate study, I think, is gonna produce more revenue possibly in the next 6 to 12 months. So
Good point.
I maintain that, yes, we can look at a 1 or 2%. It's important because it's impossible to know it right now without their doing more work, but I recommend staying at 0.
One quick clarification, I want to make clear,
Thank you.
obviously.
Of course.
Sewer and water fund, very separate from property tax, very, very separate. And we do not consider the increase of user fees in sewer and water as impacting our property tax collection.
Except that it is an increase in revenue overall. It's an
That
increase in those
cannot be
it's
commingled
it's
in any way, shape, or form.
I understand that.
I just want that to be
Yeah, I
clear in
know.
our. Yeah.
I'm not sorry that you make that clear, but still, the water and sewer funds will increase after the rate study is over.
That is very true. Yes.
Or
Are
very
we
likely.
restricted where
Yes.
we use those funds, though?
I'm sorry. What was
Are we
that?
restricted where those funds are
Yes,
used?
that's the
Yeah.
only point I was making. That's the only point
on
on the property tax. Correct.
All right, Counselor Kame, and then we'll,
I suggest we stay at the 0 because we had this is just the same
Right.
conversation we had before with everybody, and it took us a long time to reach that 0. It actually took us 2 days, and that's where we should stay.
okay. I think the suggestion is to incorporate what a 2% increase would look like when the budget's presented. It doesn't mean we'd vote in favor or against it. You can still go 0.
Thank you.
This just shows what an added 100 or 200K would do as these numbers firm up and until September the 9th. There will be multiple discussions in between now and then, I have no doubt. I think what we need to demonstrate here is, again, where it is we can potentially see flexibility to avoid shocks to the system. And if we want to move things in a direction that's going to take some time, that means sometimes doing things we don't like. Actually, it almost always means we do things we don't like. But to be prepared for it, we ought to have the information in front of us, is all I'm suggesting. That's why I think it should be, I would recommend that it shows what a 2% would look like with the proposed budget. That a fair, again, we can go 0.
Sure.
Counselor Kane, Counselor Brennan, right?
Right?
Yeah, that's fair.
But at least it'll start to show what that will mean.
Okay.
All right? Guidance therefore given. All right, thank you. All right, we're already 8 minutes past. I know I'm gonna get in a lot of trouble, so. I think we're moving now to the discussion on winter parking. Counselor Kane?
Yes, thank you. Back in 2022, the winter parking rules were changed. We tried it. Got to remember that when this was implemented, it was implemented during COVID. A lot of the businesses were shut down. People weren't visiting each other. Schools weren't being attended. People weren't traveling. However, that's changed now. The system that we have now is running into a lot of problems. One of the first things that happened after the election was started getting phone calls from everybody as soon as the snow started coming. And we've had complaints from school bus drivers. They weren't able to make corners going from some of the main streets into the other streets because cars that were parked there got plowed in and streets coming down. We got a lot of complaints from people who didn't have parking spots on their streets because there were cars left in the street. They were plowed around, and where that one car was, there was a car length behind and in front. We got complaints from people that they got their car stuck because there was an empty spot on South Main Street, but the cars were parked there for so long that they couldn't get their car, once they got their cars in, they couldn't get them back out. We got complaints from business owners downtown. It's hard enough to plow with the bump outs, and if you have a car in there, you're losing almost all the spots in front of your business. Talked with DPW. DPW, they spend a lot of time because they have to keep going down the street to make sure that when the cars move so they can plow it, if they're even able to do it. Sometimes it takes so long that the snow that was plowed around the vehicles, it hardens up into ice, and it ends up damaging their equipment. So then they have a truck down and they have to work on it. And it's real hard the way it is with the phone calls. It's kind of hard to enforce and with the ticketing. And I appreciate what Ms. Farrell said. And I did a lot of reading and research. Tell you the truth, I had 2 complaints from anybody. One of them was a person, I went to their house, and they have a 4-car driveway. They just choose to keep other stuff in their driveway. Another one, they have a driveway behind their house, but they didn't want to walk behind their house. They wanted to stay on the street, and they said, well, I don't want to lose my spot in front of my building. Those were the 2 complaints that I got not to do it. I walked around a lot of the streets. A couple people had questions about certain parking, and I looked them up, and I reviewed 33517, the parking and standing and stopping restrictions. Now, what we found is when we do amend that Part C, we're actually also going to go up into 33517 because it lists street by street. And as Ms. Farrell said, we found that even in the summertime, you can get a parking ticket for not alternate side parking on certain streets. You can get a parking ticket during the summer for not alternate side parking in some of the parking lots. So when we go through and we go back to from December 1st to April 1st, and it's only from 2 in the morning till 6 in the morning. Now, some other municipalities, everybody likes to bring up Ithaca or Aurora or different places. Some of them start at 7 o'clock in the evening. Some of them start at 10 o'clock in the evening. Geneva is only from 2 in the morning until 6 in the morning to allow our workers to clear the streets and make them passable and safe for our people. So once we do that, we're going to have to go into 33517, and we've some of the streets where there's alternate parking, we're going to make it so it's only winter parking because it's still on the books from the early 70s that it's alternate parking. So in fact, they could be getting tickets now. Same thing with some of the parking lots. There are a lot of streets that were questioned. I looked it up, and if you look up under E-Code 360, and it's 33517 under Article 4, it lists street by street, every street in Geneva. Every street in Geneva, there's a few of them that say there's no parking restrictions at all. Some of them, and some of them go into a lot of detail, and some longer ones, like South Main Street, have a lot of places where the parking is regulated in different places. For an example, Angelo Street, where Councilor Gelati is, it's the first one that came up here, and it says on the south side, there's no parking. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through, take C out, change some of the individual streets. So where there's need for parking on the street in the winter, to make it easier for them to pass, we'll have alternate parking. And we're also going to change the parking lots because originally you couldn't park after 2 in the morning at any time on any street downtown Geneva. The last snowstorm we had, I was coming into town at 2 in the morning. I drove through downtown. There were 35 cars between Tillman Street and Seneca Street. Now the plows can't go through and park that. You know how many businesses are there? And those are, there's breakfast businesses, people that are open early. They don't have parking spots for the people that want to go there because the plows can't get to them. So we've like I said, we had a lot of discussions with a lot of the people, the business owners, the people that lived around here, and then I went and I talked with the city departments, and they were running into problems with it as well. It was a good idea. However, like she said, we'll just put signs with QR codes. I have no way, personally, of reading a QR code. I don't, and I know I know a lot of people like me that don't have a smartphone that is able to do that. And it's great, technology is wonderful, but it doesn't always work. And the problem also, when you do it on call like that, is the enforcing is hard, because it's hard for a court to enforce something if it's on somebody's judgment call. There isn't anything really there that they're able to enforce. I did speak with some people in that side of the business. So I worked with a couple of the counselors. We talked about certain areas, and we're gonna go through and in certain streets where there's a need for alternate parking, we're gonna put that in there, and it's only gonna be during the winter. The places where there's alternate parking all year long, which is, it's from the old days, we're gonna take that out and make it just winter parking. And again, in the parking lots downtown, we're gonna make that only on the winter side of it, because it's, even though the signs, and she's right, because I went and I spoke with the chief of police and I asked him, and the law says that it's all year. The problem is, the signs are new and were put up, but when the signs are put up, it doesn't even reflect the actual law that we have, or the ordinance that we have on the books. So, we're gonna make the ordinance reflect what the signs say right now. It's not gonna cost us money to change the signs because they're already there, and it's just enforcing it from December 1st until April 1st, only from 2 in the morning to 6 a.m. That way it allows the DPW to go around and plow. And if anything, and I talked with a couple people, and they said, well, you know, when they used to patrol the streets with the winter parking, the police used to come down my street every night. Nobody ever stole anything off my porch because they knew they could see the police drive down streets that they don't usually see them down. They says, we've had stuff stolen off our porches now, and the police never come down. So I think this is another way also of getting our officers out into the community, into areas where they might not usually patrol, and keep an eye on things. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Comments, discussion. Councilor Petropoulos.
Yes, basically, what you said is sound. What Ms. Farrell said also has some points. It's been a matter of communicating this. I remember years ago when we moved here, yeah, the old system was in place. The problem was nobody was plowing anything. City does it, no, the county does it, but the police are still enforcing it, so we had to do it. I think that's been smoothed out at this point, but I just want to make sure that residents, particularly in the downtown area, and yes, Ms. Farrell does live in Ward 5 on that stretch, there's enough parking for everybody. Right now, I'm more concerned about, people that just want to leave the, Airbnb types or whatever. The rules for Airbnb is you got to have enough parking for your guests. So if you don't, there's a problem already. It needs fine tuning. All right. The parking lots. Hey, look. If you got to drive down that hill, if you're on South Main and you drive down the hill, you can park in that Seneca lot across from the Smith. From those hours. I mean, it's just a question of, are there enough spots? I think there are. I think a lot of the downtown folks that park on Exchange down to Seneca and beyond up in Ward 6, there's lots they could use as well. So we just need to get that out because the communication for this newfangled thing never worked. Never worked.
Mr. Venuti, and you just talking to Joe, right?
Yeah.
He's involved with this. So just remember, if we say 0, there's no cops to put tickets on the car.
Okay.
Just thought I'd throw that out.
Yes, Chief.
Yeah, I just figured since I'm sitting here, I will just offer my 2 cents with us. And prior to this change with what was once the pilot program, I was on road patrol, so I have a lot of experience dealing with winter parking enforcement as I was on night shift. The biggest issue that I saw with that transition with this, I know it's not the pilot program anymore, but I'll just use that language, is the communication style. I think there's a lot of confusion for the public. That's what my office mostly sees. Typically, with the old system, first couple days, we would do a warning period, and then the first night you would issue maybe 30, 40 tickets or so throughout the whole city. Now, because of that lack of communication, the confusion with it, the officers will write 200 a night. We start specifically right at 2 in the morning, and we end at 6. So whoever is working that shift, that is their number one priority unless they're on calls for services, winter parking enforcement. Of course, if we are busy between those hours, parking's not going to get done if we don't have the staff to do it. I will just comment as well, our officers are instructed to go down every street during their posts. So just because the winter parking has changed, they should not be ignoring any side streets of the city of Geneva. But I do think that's one of the biggest issues. And then I will just add this as well. One of the changes I made in 2025 was adding a point of sale system at the public safety building. So a large number of parking ticket complaints or payments are now done directly at the PSB, which is very time consuming for the staff when we are constantly having people come in because they are confused. And the last comment I would make is I do understand as well, Geneva's, it's an old city. A lot of old homes with limited parking, and I think that's the issue we have to really look at too. Is you have some families with a 1-car driveway or 2-car driveway, 3 or 4 cars. What do you do? So I do think that that's something that needs to be considered.
Yeah.
Chief, will this bog you guys down if you have to enforce it?
No. And you know what happened in 2020 and before this change. It bogged us down the first couple days, but again, that standard was set. There was no confusion there. The public knew for years that December 1st at 2 in the morning you can't park on the streets unless it was alternate parking. So normally after the first week of December, it was easy. The problem is now is although we might only have 2, maybe even 3 winter parking enforcement nights a year, each one. It's significant confusion, which obviously weighs down on DPW because there's cars there, they're now buried, and it becomes problematic for sure.
Counselor, the other thing I would suggest for this, from my standpoint, it's a couple things. One is clarity is key, and I think the number one thing you're suggesting here is we can put clarity around this reverting to an old system, because whether people like it or not, they know what it is because they know when it is, and they know what the requirements are during that time. The other part of that becomes what is the impact to the people in these neighborhoods? And as you pointed out, the rules as they're currently written today literally go neighborhood by neighborhood with exceptions, right, that could exist, that could alleviate or relieve those who live in those neighborhoods with adhering to whatever these requirements are, right?
Correct.
My only suggestion with this, and I'm cautious about this, is that as we look at the difference between then and now, as we look at the differences between COVID and today, what will this do that might cause a convenience because neighborhoods have altered or changed? And I'm thinking of what Jess Farrell was saying with regard to South Main Street, and she wouldn't be the only one who has raised objections to this in terms of the impact, right? So I think what I would like to see, if this moves forward, you get a sponsor or a co-sponsor and move it to resolution, is how is it you're addressing how things have changed since this was in effect to now? Are there further changes that could be introduced that alleviate potential issues? Let's say for the elderly or people who've lived on a row house and don't have a parking spot, would have to get out every night and move it back and forth, right? That sort of inconvenience. So how would you address that in this? Now, you don't have to answer it now, but for me, that would be one of the stumbling blocks for me to support something like this. That's fair. Okay?
And if I could just since South Main Street has been brought up, and in our next meeting, we are bringing back up the resolutions that council passed a few months ago relating to parking and limiting the parking only to one side. Director Venuti has raised this as a concern as far as the alternate parking. There's no longer parking on the other side of the road, and so that is obviously an impact to consider.
Right, and I talked with Councilor Lavin about it, and on those places in South Main Street's going to have like their own web page, but there's sections in it like where there's only where you can have, and they already have it on Park Place, like a 72-hour parking. I mean, South Main Street's chopped up a lot with the parking and everything there, but because you have one street that might run into problems with a couple places, the larger problem throughout the whole city, it needs to be addressed. So, thank you.
I'm trying to figure this out still. It makes my head spin. The problem with the current situation is communication, right? Some individuals just don't get the message, right? Why not?
Well,
Everybody has a phone, don't they? Even a flip phone.
It's Counselor, or,
I'm asking.
right.
And number two, isn't the signage the second part of it? The signage is confusing in some cases, no?
No.
Okay,
The signage is there that says that you have to alternate park.
yeah,
The problem is, it's only right now, when the city manager calls an emergency. However, if you get 3-4 inches of snow, it's not an emergency. They still have to plow the road.
all right.
So if you get 4 inches of snow every day for 6 days, it's not an emergency. So it's still getting plowed in. Everybody's getting plowed in. All that snow's accumulating. But nobody was told that they have to move their vehicle.
Okay.
So even with all the snow that we got this year, I think there was only maybe 2 emergencies or 3 emergencies called. And because it's so sporadic, people don't move their vehicles, and
Right.
it's hard to enforce once you do tell them to.
All right, I have to
Okay.
think about it.
All right, so Counselor Kame, at this point, the introduction of a resolution then would enter the process. So finding a co-sponsor and then introducing it so we have additional discussion, additional clarity, I think is the next step, should you so choose.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
As of right now, I'm co-sponsor.
Thank you. Okay, so that ends the discussion on that. Next is unfinished business, our first reading on the e-bike ordinance. Chief Evelyn.
Good evening. So just to summarize, last council meeting I came in and we had a discussion about the proposal for the change of the e-bike and e-scooter regulations in the city of Geneva. I will just summarize that again really quick. A lot of the language in these laws in the proposal is already listed in the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law. What this proposal is doing is it is making it a little bit more simpler by creating definitions in one area, obviously listing out the same state laws that would apply for the city of Geneva, but also clearly indicating when the police have authority to impound a vehicle should that be necessary. Those are some of the bigger changes. Obviously, individuals operating it under 16 years of age, there's some provisions there. During the discussion point, I do just want to touch on a couple of concerns that Councilor Gameau had because they were very valid and legitimate concerns. And I do want to reiterate that the stance of the police department is not to eradicate e-bikes or e-scooters in the city of Geneva. I think they offer a great way of micro-mobility for people that might not have a vehicle or maybe not a license or people that aren't physically capable of operating a bicycle. But they need to be following the correct laws. And I think what we're seeing right now is there's a complete lack of compliance. Whether tickets are issued right now under the Vehicle and Traffic Law, there is a complete lack of compliance. I look through our reports, our shift turnovers every morning, and I almost feel like it's a 50% chance that the operator on a dirt bike, moped, or e-bike is going to flee the police or not. There are internal reviews that I am doing to assist combating that, but as far as the clearly defining when the police department have authority to impound the vehicle, I do think is important. I will just share a little bit why Vehicle and Traffic Law clearly tells us the provisions of when we can impound a motor vehicle, such as aggravated unlicensed or uninsured vehicle. It gets a little bit gray when you're talking about like an e-bike or something to that effect. So that's the first reading.
Chief, one quick question.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate that. If a 12-year-old has an e-bike and he can't ride it on the sidewalk, are you suggesting the 12-year-old ride the e-bike in the street?
Well, they are not supposed to be on the sidewalks,
Right.
correct. Something like that, we would probably try to talk to the kid, get a hold of the parents, maybe get the kid safely home, find a way to get the e-bike home. If need be, keep the e-bike at the police department. Down in the Long Island area, this is one of the things that came up in the chief's conference, is there were some civil litigation issues because that child, that vehicle is lawfully owned, but now we are seizing that property, or at least in Suffolk County, that was some of the issues that were raised from a civil standpoint, because again, there's nothing really in the Vehicle and Traffic Law stating that you can take that property. So again, this is just to clearly give us that direction, so that way there is no gray area or any notice of claims to the city.
So just, sorry, it's a quick follow-up. Sorry, Councilor Kane. if that 12-year-old were on an e-bike and on the street, would that therefore be the illegal operation of a bike on a city street?
Correct.
Okay, so a 12-year-old in theory then can't
They
own-
cannot be on an e-bike, correct?
Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay.
And then I will just touch on one more thing that Councilor Gameau brought up, and that was the park usage. So current language in the city code does not identify any motorized vehicles in any of the parks with the exception of Lakeshore Park. And again, I will just reiterate that, the officers, when they are out patrolling, we have priorities of things that we are looking for. 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, whatever the case, operating a park is not one of those strong priorities. It would largely be complaint-based, and then, the officers using their judgment of what's the best way to proceed with that. So I did want to bring that up for Councilor Gameau.
Other questions?
I'm just curious, Chief, please, why are the rates, if you will, the first, second, third offense, et cetera, they're double for gasoline what they are for battery?
A lot of the battery devices we can likely fit in a patrol car depending on what vehicles we have. It's more cumbersome with a dirt bike. A lot of them are not, I can't pick up a dirt bike.
I got it.
Just that added inconvenience and the added resources we need to get that off the roadway.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chief, it did come up in conversation that, and again, I don't know what the state requires. I could bring it up with Senator Helming when I meet her next week, but like things like flashers, if you're going to make a turn, it almost happened, I think it was in Canandaigua, where, somebody was riding, but they made a sharp turn with no signal whatsoever, and it got hit. And there was a couple of close calls here where the same thing happened. Would this ordinance require that if you are riding an alternate vehicle on the street, you should have signals on it, or at least do hand signal?
That
or
is not
something?
specifically outlined in the municipal law. There are different sections of the vehicle and traffic law which outline what equipment is required based on what type of either limited use vehicle it is, limited use motorcycle it is, or the classification of e-bike.
Okay.
But I will just expand on that too. They obviously have to follow all the rules of the road as well. So that's one of the big takeaways that we're seeing right here is the complete recklessness and disregard for the rules of the road. And as I mentioned last time, we're not going to be impounding every single e-biker that we are stopping. This is where discretion and judgment comes into play when you're dealing with the public and enforcing the laws. Obviously the people that are fleeing from us, the officers are going to use their judgment on whether that e-bike is going to get impounded.
Well, it's obstruction probably, but
Absolutely.
at the same time, another question I have is, I forgot what it was already. So yeah, we may or may not have signals, whatever, but education, that's been brought up. That's what I want to say. So I mentioned the equivalent of like when you get a hunting license, you got to go through that 2-day thing where the state trooper tells you how, this is the shooty end, whatever. And then if you pass the test, you get the pink card, which is what you need to get a hunting license. Is there anything perhaps that the state has that could educate, or would that fall upon us because this is a local law? If so, what would the cost be? Can we actually do it? Could it be volunteer driven? Certification,
I haven't seen anything like that at the state level. This is something we've been talking about in the Traffic Safety Board meeting. It is likely going to come up next week when I meet with them. I think the only thing I would caution on and probably reach out to David if we were going to host any type of safety classes is what is the training requirements for that trainer, because I feel like you would be incurring some sort of liability of training the public. What's the skill set of whoever that person is that's training.
Good point.
I will add that as far as educating the public, over the last 2 years, I've been really focusing on getting as much information out to the public as I can, whether that is through our social media channels, dropping educational pamphlets off at the school district, local businesses, City Hall, PSB, as well as a multitude of educational events with the high school. We just did it again last week for some high school students. The high school, Geneva City School Districts, they are going to be changing their policies as far as e-bikes on their property. That is a change that has happened this past year. So it is promising, but we are still focusing on the education aspect.
All right, shall we set a public hearing date? What's the next available date, Nicole? Do we want the public hearing, would it be at the ops meeting or would it be the
You
following?
have a meeting on August 18th and September, yeah, so August 18th.
Oh, we'll need the 9th for the budget.
Busy, I think.
Mhm.
So, set it for the August the 18th, public hearing? Okay. Thank you, Chief. All right, under new business, we have, well, first what we'll do is a resolution amending the 26 general and water fund budgets.
Yep. So I can take that for Director Venuti. So essentially, we're amending the equipment budget for 2026. We City Council adopted the 2026 budget last year, and as a part of that budget, DPW was set to purchase 4 trucks. We were able to get them cheaper and purchase 5 trucks with the same money. So 5 trucks for the price of 4, if you will. What we need to do is adopt the budget so that makes all of that okay to do for our auditors, because the budget itself did not specifically state 5 vehicles, it only stated 4. So there's no extra cost to the city. It's essentially just utilizing that equipment fund that had already been budgeted for to purchase an additional vehicle.
Counselor Kane.
If you can get 5 vehicles for the price of 4 and you were going to buy 4, that means you can get 4 at a discounted rate and save some money.
Yep.
Point made.
Agreed.
What's the net difference that you would look to come out of the budget?
Let's see. It left a balance in, what account does he have here, in the water fund of $939.34.
Right, so it's small. So I'm assuming in the arm, there's one less vehicle that's being asked for.
There would be, yes.
Right,
Was it already purchased?
They did purchase it.
So they went and purchased it.
it's begging forgiveness later.
Oh, yeah?
That's what this is.
Well, then you don't get what you want in the budget the next time.
All right, Counselor. So I think this is fairly straightforward. I think regardless, we can't go and sell it on eBay tomorrow to make up the difference and get it back. So barring anything else, do we have a motion on the floor? Counselor Petropoulos, do you have a second? Counselor Gelati. The clerk call the roll.
Counselor Brennan,
Aye.
Counselor Kane,
Nay.
Counselor Petropoulos.
Aye.
Counselor Gilat,
Aye.
Counselor Gamow. Oh, sorry, he's muted. That's on me, I got unmuted, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Sorry, Ben.
It's all good. Can you hear me now?
I'm very sorry,
Testing.
Counselor Gamow, I had you muted.
No, you're good. You're good.
Pardon?
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Aye.
thank you. I'm gonna mute you again. Mayor Sistery,
Aye.
carried.
All right, we have the introduction of 2 resolutions. One is a resolution declaring the blight for the New York State grant funding under the 2026 Federal Community Development Block Grant Imminent Threat Program. Acting City Manager Young.
Yes, I actually had talked about this at a previous council meeting, so I won't belabor it too much, but essentially we are looking to cover the overage cost for the demolition of Building C at the GEDC building, owned by the IDA, but, our DPW facilities and some of our materials are stored in that building. The City Council had appropriated $300,000 towards that. That is obviously not going to cover the demolition of the building, and so this is an attempt to get grant funding to cover the rest of it. The only difference here is when we originally passed the resolution, we were pursuing a designation as an imminent threat. Based off of conversations with the state, we need to go the slum or blight route, as they don't identify this as an imminent threat, and that's how we'll be eligible for it. So it's both that designation as well as the public hearing.
Do we have a motion?
Yeah, do you want them blocked?
want to vote for both at the same time, right?
We could, yes, sorry, yes.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder.
Okay, so they're blocked. It's the public hearing and the designation.
Perfect.
Okay. With-
So this is that and setting the public hearing for also the 18th of
Yes.
August. Okay. All right, do we have a motion? Counselor Petropoulos, do we have a second? Counselor Gelati. Discussion. I will say one thing in the name of Counselor Lavin in particular, that the IDA in this building in particular just represents a continued challenge that just costs the city more and more money. The IDA unto itself and the way it's functioning, if I'm not mistaken, was meant to cover a lot of this cost if whatever was beyond the 300K. So the request here is for us to go beyond what the IDA is able to do. And I say able because I don't believe they're in a financial position to do it. I think that is a very fair statement and should be stated, that the IDA simply doesn't have the money to do this, and that this building does need to come down. Again, I don't think there's any gray area with this whatsoever. It's a matter of a path, and my congratulations and thanks to Taylor and staff is coming up with a way to seek monies, grant monies to help achieve this. So that's my comment here, echoing what Councilor Lavin may say. He may go on a bit more than I did, but I say that in jest, Councilor Lavin, because you're probably listening. But no, I understand this and would therefore support it. Yep. Other comments?
No, I think that's pretty well said right there.
Okay. All right. City Clerk, please call the roll.
I'm going to unmute Counselor Gamal before I call roll this time.
Okay.
Thanks for bearing with me. Counselor Brennan?
Aye.
Counselor Kame?
Aye.
Counselor Petropoulos?
Aye.
Counselor Gilat?
Aye. The Yankee Stadium.
Counselor Gamal?
Aye.
Mayor Sissery?
Aye.
Carried.
Okay, that deals with the resolutions. We have one board and commission appointment, Jacob Balamut to the Board of Ethics.
I so move.
Moved by Councilor Gelati, second
I'll
by
second.
Councilor Kame. Discussion?
Who interviewed Mr. Ballard?
Board of Ethics took care of it.
Okay,
Victor Nelson.
thank you.
All right. Actually, why don't we do this all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Abstain? So carried. Next and finally, the consideration of meeting minutes, July the 1st, 2026, July the 21st, 2026. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
I move, I reviewed them, they look good.
All right, Counselor Kane, second. Counselor Gelati, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So carried. Do we need to do a vote, by the way, to set the public hearing on the e-bikes? We set it for the 18th.
Yeah. Yeah, you should vote.
Oh.
Yeah, you kind of whizzed by it.
I think we missed that. I missed that.
We did miss that.
Okay. Could I please, before we adjourn, have a motion to set the public hearing for August the 18th for the adopting of the e-bike ordinance?
So moved.
Councilor Petropoulos, second. Councilor Gelati, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstain? So carried. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Councilor Brennan, second. Councilor Gelati, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay. So carried.